You got permission, now what?
I smoked him! I smoked him! He's down right there!
Well, welcome back to the show, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. It's June 3rd today, and happy Monday. As you can see, I got some Chasing November apparel on. We're already here at Midwest Whitetail thinking about Chasing November. We're looking for that August release time like we normally do, and I've been hard at it pretty much ever since season ended last year, getting this thing done. It's awesome going back through all this footage. We had probably our best season ever, and we're really excited to bring this one to you. On today's show, we're gonna join Kaleb Greiner and Owen Reigler. Kaleb takes us through part 1 of 3. That's going to be a little mini series of going through permission farm hunting and how Kaleb has used different methods, different strategies to not only gain permission, but also to keep it, and what he does once he gets permission to go from there and, you know, ultimately have success in harvesting mature bucks. Over the past couple seasons, you guys have seen Kaleb have a lot of great success, and we're excited to share this one with you. After that, Owen's gonna take us through a few archery tips. As you know, he's the archery guru, and I always learn personally a lot from him when it comes to archery. So hope you guys enjoy the show, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Meet you over there.
Long time no see.
But weather finally took a turn and we're putting some beans in the ground. But the whole reason you guys are here today is I have a 3-part series that is solely about permission farm hunting. And I think this is going to be directed towards not only the average Joe, but maybe guys that are just starting to get into hunting, guys that maybe want to take that next step in their hunting career and get a little bit more dived into the details come fall. But like I said, there's 3 parts of this series. We're going to start with the first part today, and all 3 parts are based on the time of year. So today we're going to talk about finding that perfect farm. We're going to talk about scouting. I'm going to talk about how I use trail cameras in the off season, and then we're going to talk about in-person scouting as well. So I'm going to get these beans in the ground. Hopefully we got some rain coming tomorrow, and they can flourish. So let's get after it. We got beans wrapped up. I got a few fields left to go on later on today. But the main reason we're here to talk is, you know, we're talking about this time of year, everything that I'm doing on permission pieces. And this is a 3-step series, like I mentioned earlier, but we're gonna start with the bread and butter, and that basically covers everything on the front end of hunting. And I mentioned earlier, this is for guys that are just starting out hunting, or some guys that are maybe veterans in hunting. They've been hunting 5, 10, 15 years, and maybe they just want to up their game. And I'm not saying that my way is the correct way or the way that you should do it, but it's what works for me. And you know, I did have, if you guys can recall, a few years ago, I had a 5-year window where I didn't shoot a buck. I was just stuck on passing deer. Well, that changed really fast after these things started to click. I started learning from my failures, and I started to have more success. So step one to permission hunting is obviously you gotta find that permission farm. And the way I go about trying to weed out what farms I do wanna ask permission for and what farms I'm probably gonna leave alone is finding a farm that is, one, small in size for cover, and two, secluded from the road. Now, one of the benefits to these small properties per se versus a property you drive by, big hardwoods, big farm, no questions there's deer in there, but there's probably 2 or 3 other guys that are hunting it. So you don't have the pressure from other hunters per se on these smaller farms. Permission hunting is all about the variables that you can and can't control. With permission, you can't control a lot of variables. Private, you can control what's going on that property, but permission, it's just not that way. So if you can find a small permission piece without other hunters on it, you're taking away those uncontrolled variables. The variables are staying the same. There's not as much traffic in those areas. So now you know what I look for in a permission farm. Maybe some of you guys don't have the same terrain, that's okay. But the next process of my scouting, going to ask for permission farms, is I'm gonna go on Onyx, I'm gonna drop a pin on every single farm that I wanna ask permission for. The reason I do it on Onyx is because I can look up that landowner's name, and then in return, they have the address on there. You can look up the phone number if you'd like, but I always recommend going and visiting a farmer, a grower, a landlord in person. So you got your list of properties that you need to go ask for permission now. You're going up to the door. There's one piece of advice that I can give you guys, and it worked for me significantly last year. When I go and ask for permission, I always ask, can I have permission for just this year? I'm strictly bow hunting. That's all I'm doing. If you're gun hunting, I'm gun hunting. You be very straightforward and to the point. You tell that landlord exactly what you want to do on their property. So obviously at this point, you're gonna get a yes or you're gonna get a no, which brings us to step 2 on the permission. You got permission, now what? This is my favorite part of this time of year, and that's the scouting side of things. This is where you can really increase your odds come fall and be one step ahead of maybe the neighbor, or just one step ahead from the deer that you got picked out that you want to go after this fall. The first thing I do when I get a new permission piece, or say a client buys a new piece, I'm gonna go walk that entire property. And one of the first things that I'm gonna walk is the entire edge of the property looking for fence gaps. Not only just man-made pinch points like a fence gap, but maybe just a natural pinch point in the farm that you can find via scouting. You gotta find the cover, you gotta find the bedding, you gotta find maybe there's a couple more white oaks on this ridge versus there's only black and red oaks on this ridge. So I know when October hits, white oaks, they produce every year. There's gonna be acorns on that ridge versus that ridge, probably not gonna have many acorns, so that might be the better spot to hunt in October. What we're doing right now in these steps, we're developing a plan and refining that plan as we go throughout the summer for fall. And the way that we refine that is by trail cameras. Cuttybacks are one of the main scouting techniques that I use in the off season. And the way I run cameras is, say I get a new permission farm, I'm gonna go probably run, depending on the farm, 2 to 3 cameras per farm at the beginning, just to start figuring things out. When I'm putting those cameras out, I'm gonna start by looking for natural pinch points. And after walking this entire farm, we already know where those are. We're walking the entire farm, we're dropping pins on Onyx, and once you get that accumulation of all those pinch points, that's when you start running your cameras on those. I'm always gonna put a vine scrape this time of year in front of the camera. I want natural movement. They're gonna come back to that scrape naturally. And not only are they gonna come back throughout these summer months, they're gonna keep hitting it all the way through October, November, January. It's a social hub for these deer, and it really, in turn, creates a pinch point in itself. That's why I like using them right by my stand. But every 2 weeks, I'm gonna take inventory off those cameras. I don't run cell mode this time of year. I'm always going in person to grab the cards. Say I have a camera that's, you know, it's getting a few pictures of deer on trail, but it's not, I can tell that it's just not in the right spot. There's a better trail somewhere out there. Well, I'm gonna take that camera and I'm gonna move it to a better spot. Consistently, every 2 weeks throughout the summer, starting now, I am going to move my cameras every 2 weeks until I find the spot of spots, the best natural pinch points, and I'm gonna put a vine scrape right there, and I'm gonna run a camera there until I find the best spots on the farm, and I'm gonna leave them there for the rest of the fall. That way, when October comes around or November comes around, you don't have to run around like a chicken with his head cut off, moving cameras all over the farm, messing up your deer hunting because you got no deer on camera because they're not in the right spots. And if you guys look at last year with Vendetta, I spent all October trying to get permission on properties, walking them for 1 day, and not hunting the majority of them, but eventually coming back, finding Vendetta, having 1 day ever being on that property for knowledge, but at least I knew the topography. I knew how many trees were on that fence line. I knew where the lows and highs were on that fence line. And that's how I had one of the best hunts I've ever had in my life last year. You know, I never would have probably capitalized on that deer if I wouldn't have spent the 1 hour scouting, speed scouting that property back in October. That really brings me back to another point that I'd like to make. Multiple options. If you ask me how many permission farms I have, I probably would tell you, to be honest with you, because it's a lot. I like to have multiple options, so come fall, if Lucky died, and OG died, or I had a year where I just get slammed by EHD, I'm running out of options, well, at least I still got a plan Z or a plan Y at the end to go after something. So it's always nice to have multiple options in your pocket. Now on the other side of the spectrum, for inventory cameras, and when I say inventory cameras, these are cameras where I'm gonna manipulate deer to come to the camera. I'm gonna put feed, mineral, or maybe even both right in front of that camera. Normally, I'm only using one location on the farm to have mineral or feed in front of that camera, depending on the size of the farm. So these does, they're lactating. These bucks, they're obviously putting on antler growth right now. It's a great time of year to supplement your deer herd. We've got a code for you guys, MW25, if you want to receive 25% off any Axe Outdoors products. I really enjoyed that feed and mineral last year. I got a lot of awesome photos with it, with all the bucks that I was after. And I think it's something you guys should definitely check out. And one thing that I always bring up whenever I'm talking about mineral feed, especially here in Iowa, just make sure that you're in compliance with your conservation officer per your county. That way you're not in trouble come this fall. But now that we got our cameras out, they're deployed, we understand the farm makeup, we understand to an idea where some of the better spots of the farm might be versus some of maybe not the better parts. We're gonna do in-person scouting, and this is what I am positive not enough people do. What I mean by in-person scouting is going out in the summer months after the crops are up and figuring out how the deer move on that farm. If you look at prior years with Lucky, how did I know that Lucky lived on that farm? Well, I never hunted that farm once during regular October, November, and all those years of running cameras on that piece. I would go out there in the summer months and I would wait to watch that deer bed, wait and see where he was going out to feed, but I wasn't only looking for my buck. One of the most important things to in-person scouting is seeing all deer movement, the natural movement. That's what summer's for, is figuring out the natural movement of the property. If you can gather this in-person info and you notice the does are hugging a certain edge, or the deer always come out on this trail versus the trail over here, not only are you going to be able to find camera locations and stand locations, but you're gonna be able to find the exact locations that they need to be come fall. So by the time you guys are watching this, it's gonna be early June. And I'm just gonna be honest with you guys, you probably aren't really thinking about deer this time of year. Most people don't until July 4th hits. But if you guys want to increase your odds, all this information that we've kind of retained, go out, apply it, because the next part of this 3-part series is strictly going to cover multiple options for food plots on permission pieces, as long as you have permission from the landowner. A few of these plots are very cost effective and they're very easy to do. You don't need big equipment like this. You can just use hand tools. If you have any questions on maybe how to change up your plan of attack, come June, July, and putting those cameras out and finding that permission farm and doing some in-person scouting on that permission farm, give me a shout. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, There's a bunch of other guys on the team. I'm sure they'd love to answer your questions. I'm looking forward to bringing part 2 of the series to you guys here soon. We're gonna do that a little closer to planting season. That way you guys have a good idea and you can make that plan before planting season is here. But we're not gonna end the show here. We're gonna scoot things over to Owen Reigler. He's been busy at it. He's got all of his seed in the ground. He's through grumpy season already. And he's got an awesome archery tip for you guys. So let's throw things over to Owen. As always, thanks for watching this week, guys.
All right, top left dot. Can we change it to top right dot?
I've got a couple tips for you today, and they both revolve around aiming. First one I want to talk about is the weight on your bow. I weighed my bow the other day, and this is a little over 7 pounds is what I'm shooting here. I shot pretty good last weekend at an ASA, but I noticed I had a little more pin float than I like, had a little more pin movement. So I wanted to add some more weight to it. So I came back, put 2 more ounces on my back bar, added this stabilizer on the front. And I like the way it's holding. It's holding good. So play around with the weight on your bow and just see, you know, if you add weight, are you steadier? I kind of use the analogy like if you were holding a feather up in the air and it was a windy day and a gust hits you, is your arm gonna move? It probably is. Well, if you hold up a bowling ball in that same hand and that same gust hits you, is it gonna move? Maybe, but probably not as much. So that's what I think about getting a heavier bow. I love it for 3D. Your pin will float much better, he'll be steadier. The only time I'd go to a lighter bow is if I'm doing a lot of walking. Like if you're hunting out west or something, you're gonna be doing a ton of walking, I'd probably lighten it up. But for hunting whitetails out of a tree stand or a ground blind or whatever, I like a heavy setup. So I've got another archery tip for you here. And this one revolves around aiming. One of the most important ones I can think of, and that's your pin brightness. If you look at my Spot Hog scope right here, you'll see I've got a rubber band covering up some of the fiber. If you're standing out in the sun, let's say you're shooting a 3D, you're in the sun, that pin is gonna be super bright. You're gonna see a halo. Maybe with my eyes, sometimes I'll get double vision when it's that bright. So I want that just to barely glow so you can just see that when you're aiming. And the key to it when you're aiming is to look at what you want to hit. So that's another reason you want that to be just so dim so you can look right past your sight. You can see it obviously, but you're looking past it what you want to hit. So important not to focus on your pin and just focus where you want that arrow to go, and a little dimmer pin will do just that. You'll shoot better. Well, I'm gonna go pull those arrows, keep shooting, make sure I get my 20 minutes in. As always, I appreciate you guys watching, and we'll see you on the next one. Thank you.